Good evening, everyone. I am Daryl D'Souza, founder of Earthkeepers Connect, your host for this evening, the seventh day of the pre-summit webinars, 30 of them for the entire month of October, which are leading up to the New Earth Summit in November 13th, 14th, and 15th. It is India's first integrative summit on solutions for our problems in health, food, farming, and environment. I extend a warm thanks and also on behalf of members of our 10 Earthkeeper groups in India and overseas to our esteemed panelists of this evening. And we express our gratitude to you for taking out time from your busy schedules to be with us and share your wisdom so that all watching this webinar and its recording later may live healthier and more balanced lives. Our topic for today is prioritizing mental and emotional health. So I will first start with introducing our panelists. Joan Pinto is trained in process work at Astha Foundation, Bangalore, and has a MS in counseling and psychotherapy from IPMS Mumbai. She is a resource person for professional development programs at Astha and is also senior faculty at St. Mary's Counseling and Training Center, Mapsa, Goa. She has broadened her understanding of healing through various other trainings, which include basic acupressure and Zen Shiatsu, basic holistic health and foot reflexology, and craniosacral therapy at Medical Mission Sisters, Pune. MCKS Basic Pranic Healing Course for World Pranic Healing Foundation Incorporated, Manila, Philippines in Goa. Basic and Intermediate Jin Shin Do Body Mind Acupressure conducted by Jin Shin Do Foundation, California in Goa. Through her experience, Joan has designed simple, helpful exercises for awareness, self-exploration, healing, and moving forward. She makes use of process work, positive psychology, natural remedies, and exercises from alternative healing modalities to design her programs and sessions. Shobhika Jaju is a psychologist and founder of Silver Linings, Guidance and Counseling Center, Margao. She has a master's degree in clinical psychology from the University of Mumbai and is an alumni of the prestigious Sophia College for Women, Mumbai. She is also a certified career analyst and a queer affirmative practitioner. Shobhika works with adults and adolescents using the principles of cognitive behavior therapy. She works with individuals showing symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, or having different adjustment difficulties in family, relationships, work, etc. She has around 8 years of experience working as a psychologist. Shobhika is also an assistant professor of psychology at Chowgule College, Margao, and frequently writes for print and online media. She has held the position of features editor with the Planet Goa magazine, and at present writes a regular column on mental health for Incredible Goa magazine. Her work in the field of psychology was recently featured in the Times of India and Cafe Herald Goa editions. Aditi Tendulkar is the founder of Soul Healing Counseling Center, Goa. She has an MSc in Psychological Counseling from Indian Institute of Psychology and Research, a postgraduate diploma in Human Resource and Administration from Tata's Institute of Social Science. Currently, she is pursuing her PhD in psychology. She pursued her postgraduate specialization in arts-based therapy from Mind and Arts Institute, Mumbai. She also pursued a postgraduate diploma in clinical hypnotherapy. Her specializations are psychotherapy, cognitive behavior therapy, rational emotive behavior therapy, hypnotherapy, play therapy, art therapy, gestalt therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, graphology, solution for brief therapy, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, and also transactional analysis. Our last panelist, Muskaan Khanna, is a holistic mindfulness and meditation coach. She was born to a religious Punjabi family and did her schooling through convent education in the holy city of Amritsar. In her were sown the seeds of serving humanity at a very young age. She is a sociology graduate and has worked for 16 years in India's leading private sector bank in the service and training department. In the quest of exploring deeper dimensions of life, she moved on to become a life coach. She offers online workshops and counseling for families and people in the areas of parenting, prosperity, mindfulness, and meditation. She has a YouTube channel. So that was the introduction of all our wonderful panelists, and I'm so happy and glad to be amongst all of these wonderful personalities who have done such lovely work. So first, just an announcement for the audience. Uh, so we will begin the 3 rounds of questions from our panelists that will conclude in 1 hour, so that we can keep the next hour for Q&A with the audience. Accordingly, I request each panelist to address each question in a maximum of 5 minutes. For those in our audience who would like to receive the recorded version of this webinar, please visit our website earthkeepersconnect.org and subscribe to notification from our mobile news app. Or you can also go onto our YouTube channel, The New Earth Summit, for the recorded version of this webinar. Our audience need not wait up till 7 p.m. to type their questions in the Q&A box. So the Q&A box is available now as the panelists speak, and if you have some question, you can type it there. But we will take up all those questions at 7 o'clock. So here I will start with our questions for the panelists. So the first is, can you explain what are the signs of mental and emotional imbalance? And what kind of help should people seek out? Because we generally see that the person themselves doesn't know that they're having a problem. It's always somebody else who observes and tries to tell them. And most of the time people are in denial. So Shobhika, would you please take it?
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. That's a very wonderful and very relevant question, I must say. I think I'll go with addressing it in two parts. Firstly, what are the signs that an individual may be experiencing emotional or mental health concerns? And in my experience, in my academic knowledge, I always say this one thing to everybody, that please focus on if there is any behavior that is otherwise from the usual self of an individual. And to explain that, let me give you a very simple example. Let's say an adolescent or a teenager has been a good student, studies regularly, is going to school regularly, has a good set of friends, and then you gradually see a decline in their academic performance, in the way they connect with the world around them, in the way they make friends. The friends are probably also complaining of social withdrawal on this person's part. That is a red flag. There may or may not be a diagnostic label that we can attach to an individual when they are showing behavior which is different from their usual behavior, but we need to address that. Either it could be the family, it could be the friends, or it could be, the teachers. But that is a red flag. More specifically, if you are asking about signs and symptoms of emotional or mental health concerns, and I'm particularly using the word concerns and not disorder, because in order to arrive at the diagnosis that it is a disorder, we need to have lot of clarifications, lot of symptoms to be present in a certain way. So if we are to talk about signs and symptoms, to suggest that an individual may be dealing with some kind of mental health concerns here. Most commonly, the things that get affected are also physiological in nature. For example, sleep. We do see symptoms of either excessive sleeping or no sleeping at all. It's um, same thing applies to appetite. Excessively, like eating too much, overeating, or not eating at all, um, too much of social withdrawal, or a risky impulsive social behavior, a lot of agitation or complete lethargic uh, day routines, sticking up with your routine or just trying to do too much in too little time. So if you notice these symptoms, what I'm trying to say here is any extreme is a red flag and that needs to be probed further. Whether or not it is a sign of an imbalance, it would be premature of me to say that unless and until the person in question who is experiencing these symptoms is brought into mental health care. Which takes me to the second part of your question, which is what does one do if they are experiencing these signs of a possible mental health concern here? And first and foremost, I always tell everybody, please talk. Talking helps a lot. Talking by itself is very therapeutic. So it's important that individuals talk about what they are experiencing with others. Sometimes, however, we may not be in that frame of mind to, reach out to others on our own and address these concerns. So it would help that if, as family, friends, caregivers, teachers, we are noticing any of the red flags, we reach out to the person in question and try to talk to them about it, or at least assure the person in question that you are there for them. And most importantly, seek mental health care help. Mental health care is unfortunately stigmatized in the society. However, we are making a lot of progress, I would like to believe. And therefore, the best way to deal with these issues and make sure, or at least try to prohibit them from becoming something very major, would be to seek care at the earliest possible opportunity. So that's from my side, Daryl.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shobhika. Joan, what would you say are the signs, you know, of needing some attention for mental and emotional problems?
Okay. What I'd like to say is like there will be a combination when people come to you. They usually come when they're a little chronic, like what Shobhika was just saying. Look at the red flags. Usually people don't notice these red flags. So I'll just go a little into details about how the signs would show up. Maybe mental, emotional, physical. And then there are some social relationship issues and also spiritual issues for that matter. So if I look at the mental thing, there would be like a lot of negative thinking. There will be a cognitive distortion, blame game, complaining. There'll be inability to hold your mind. So there'll be like, a jumpy mind. And you're not finding a reason to live. You find people are helpless, not knowing how to use your inner potential. So you feel that sense of deadness. So at a mental level, there's this exhaustion sort of thing. If also at an emotional level, there's an overwhelm. There are different layers of emotions which I help them with to, just go to one by one. I help them with the emotions. So there'll be a lot of feelings coming up from that if we can pick them up. So it's like feelings of sadness, worries, guilt. There'll be some quick mood changes, feeling of being unloved, unworthy, not belonging. There's violence, sometimes anger, self-loathing, no motivation. And then there'll be like a lot of emotional numbness. Suppose there's a grief or there's some traumatic shock that has happened. Uh, that could be one of the things. Now, very often people will not come for help, but they'll usually come only after all the health and the physical aspects and the physiological aspects have gone through, and they've got these reports which are saying there's nothing wrong with you, and I think you need to meet a counselor. So it's at that stage when people come in. So they're usually coming in with not able to sleep, stress, anxiety, panic attacks, then poor eating habits, and ailments of aches, pains, headaches. Now, on the social level, also there'll be isolation, perhaps within the home itself, not being understood, feeling isolated, lonely, not able to relate to the spouse or to people or to parents. Now, that also leads to relationship issues, and we'll find that the client will feel unheard, not wanted, inability to also get in touch with yourself. So inability to make space for oneself. So that when they come, these could be some of the signs. So what I would say is, don't wait. Like usually counseling is curative, but when we look at process work, it's preventive. So what we do, what I do is also, I'm working with kids starting 6 years to 10 years, teaching them how to understand their thoughts, their feelings, their words, and how to, in simple language, make a team of your thoughts, words. It's a regular program which I have every Friday for kids. So this is my way of reaching out and creating a preventive healthcare sort of thing. And my request is, don't wait. Usually, you do most of the times people come when it's very late, when sometimes it's like so difficult and you have to go in for medication. So when you find signs which the person is withdrawn, feeling listless, not able to wake up, come for help, seek help. It's nothing wrong with seeking help. It's the counselor or the psychologist is there to help you see another side of yourself and to help you. People always ask me, is this only for, I'm not sick, is this also for normal people? So it's for normal people, it's for everybody. It's just to understand, explore, discover yourself a lot more. Yes, that's all for me. Daryl, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Joan. Aditi, what would you like to mention? Any other angles or a little more on what panelists have already spoken?
Sure. So I think Shobhika and Joan have already covered most of the signs when we look at mental or emotional imbalance. But what I would also like to add is the fact that when people are unable to deal with their emotions in the most appropriate manner, they always look for unhealthy coping mechanisms. It could be overeating, it could be oversleeping, it could be um, different forms of intoxication, drugs, alcohol, smoking, or there could be different forms of addictions as well. We're talking about gaming, online gaming, different ways that people are looking at different coping mechanisms which are mostly unhealthy, rather than dealing with what is actually the main issue.
Muskan, would you like to take it up? And maybe,
Yes.
also, I just thought of this, some more simpler things that, people can relate to. That means, what should the parents look out, for certain behavior from children, or what should a spouse look out for certain behavior in their, in their counterpart to understand there's something, not right. Yeah, so my question was, uh, was that, any simpler things, for example, parents to notice about their children, and like you mentioned, Aditi, excessive being online, most of the time, and not neglecting a lot of things in life. So youngsters are spending, time on the mobile till 2 a.m. at night, and they have no dialogue with their parents. So I'm sure that is, one sign of something not right in the house. So, Muskan, would you elaborate any further, or signs and symptoms?
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you so much for having us today. And what I experience with adolescents, especially teenagers, is that they are living in an era which is a contrast effect, basically. So, contrast effect, by that I mean that all is well except me, and the grass is always greener on the other side. So, since this generation is exposed to, has a lot of exposure to social media, the moment they log into any digital platform, they have selfies bombarded in 100 selfies bombarded in a day, and they see flashy lifestyles which others are endorsing, and the vacation lifestyles that everybody is having. So we have families and parents who come up and express that we have to live up to that societal pressure, so that we also are able to display or show such kind of exposures that we have in our lifestyles too. So that is a demand and supply thing which is happening, because teenagers demand that my friends are going to Switzerland and our next vacation should be nothing less than short of a Disneyland or Europe. So this is the kind of social pressure that builds up because one person is leading the campaign and everybody else wants to follow that likes on social media. So where you see that the child becomes is asking or hungry for approval, seeking validation, that since everybody else is doing it, so I need to have that device or that iPhone or that vacation under my kitty also. So that becomes an alarming signal that this is a lot of validation seeking kind of a behavior that the teenager is showing. The other is like Aditi said, that yes, online gaming, because that is a way where they get instantly gratified, instantly rewarded with points. So that is one medium where and of course I have a teenager son, so I faced that kind of a span where my son was addicted to online gaming, because that is what they need, that somebody is instantly validating and rewarding them with points, and they can become superior in a world otherwise which tells them that you are average and you're okay. So they need validation basically. And this is per se teenagers. Otherwise in couples and relationships we see that there is since comparison has set up, so what happens is couples get detached. There is less of emotional quotient and couples tend to think that the other person is always good and my partner is little lesser, and so they tend to think little lesser of their partner and they show that signs of detachment or emotional unavailability, and even lower sexual drive. So a lot of such things happen between parents and teenagers and couples. So my request is that as soon as we see that we are always hungry for validation, approvals, or seeking something which is beyond my accepted periphery, I want to go somewhere in extremes, okay, that is a sure short sign that you are seeking something which is obviously not natural. So not accepting and not having compassion towards yourself are the sure signs that that you want to go to a platform which is totally not yours. So like in school, how the teacher used to say that better just write the exam, follow your pattern, don't copy. So here also I would like to say that let's stick to that pattern where we don't copy, okay, the copycat culture. Let's stop that, and let's put the individuality to work, the uniqueness to work, and not become like everybody else. So that's what I want to bring.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice view and point there. Taking it back to Aditi. Yes, Aditi, could you please continue where you were at?
Sure. So I was talking about unhealthy coping mechanisms. Any form of excessive dependence on anything, gaming, overeating, oversleeping is not really healthy. One must always try to see whether there is a balance. And apart from that, there are various other signs and symptoms like everyone on the panel has already mentioned. There could be constant tiredness, changes in your appetite, changes in your sleep cycles, confused thinking, distorted thinking, being wrapped up in a constant overwhelming emotions of, say, guilt, despair, sadness, excessive amount of sadness, anxiousness, constant worries, constant apprehension about the future, different forms of changes in even your physiology. So aches, body aches, migraines without any biological reasons to could also say that there's something, your mind is sensing there is something wrong and your body is automatically reacting to it. So these could be various signs and symptoms of mental and emotional imbalance. To come to the second part of your question of what kind of help should one seek out, I think all of us need to be in a space where we have constant supportive relationships in our environment. If we have supportive and healthy relationships and environment, we are freely able to be ourselves, we are able to talk it out. Finding friends circle, finding people in our immediate circles who are non-judgmental and who can give us the space to just vent out and pour out our feelings is very important. And thirdly, seeking out for professional help. Counseling is a process by itself. It is not a shortcut for immediate happiness. So based on whatever issues that you're facing, it is important that we seek out help of the professional. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Aditi. Um, a question has just come to mind because of what Muskaan also mentioned, is that the online world. We know that the online world is growing, and and there are very high standards over there, right? Out of 7.5 billion people, you probably see 7 million of the everybody who does the right thing and who looks good and who's got the flashy stuff and the great things, they come online and their selfies and their pictures are there. So it's a very high standard that is put there, and all of the youngsters and even maybe grown-ups, uh, they get that measurement standard and they want to live up to that, or they think that that is what they deserve. If they can see it and they like it, then they think they deserve it. And the other comparison is what is their actual reality and their actual surrounding and their family life. And so there may be a big difference between that. So is it that since the online world is a reality and it's everywhere, does some counseling have to be given to homes and families, basically for everybody to realize maybe parents should do it, or maybe there should be some kind of counseling system where people have to understand this, that this is a very done up virtual world and it's a hyped world and it is not so real, and we have to kind of be more ground to earth. So somehow I'm thinking that the basic, when there's a lack or certain things are missing in the home, I think there is a recipe for slow disaster. So would any panelists like to comment on this, that uh, what should be done in the home uh, to address something like this?
Can I take that?
Yes, any panelist, please go.
All right. Thank you. So, in my experience, since I am talking from my personal point of view also, uh, what I felt is that for children, today we have coined a term quality time with children, but for children, quantity is still quality. Okay, so there is no equation. We may have modified and manipulated the equation that suits the working culture and the dual income families, that okay, give quality time, that does suffice. But somewhere that personal touch with this generation, because it didn't happen on a single day, it was a compounding effect over the last decade. And what happened is they had everything at one click, but no emotional connect. So what I mean to say is that somewhere that quality has to be supplemented with quantity too. And, giving a right perspective and direction to the child. Of course, they cannot zeroize the digital world. It's not possible. But having a mutual agreement with regards to the balance that Aditi spoke about, that there has to be a balance and everything is all right, but finding a mutual agreement between the teenager and the parent. So you have to sit and, talk it out, because lack of communication is something which they, want to fill it up through the digital world, because they have a lot of friends on the media, and everybody, the moment you log in to any online game, you have 15 friends logged in immediately. So now, like how we used to have our kitty times, they have their kitty times online now. So it has to be a mutual agreement. Communication has to happen in the families. Thankfully, with COVID, we all are in our four walls of the homes, and there we found that that quantity made a substantial difference, because you could easily have that emotional diet which was missing. Actually, we always talk about building up the immune system, but I talk about emotional diet. Children are not nutritionally and emotionally filled up with the kind of communication that they should be having with parents. that made a lot of difference at my home. And my son understood the pros and cons of, because we, of course, then digitally we used one medium, which was finding out that how much time is he spending on Facebook. So of course it came in handy, where he realized 8 hours he was online. So of course that set the ball rolling, that okay, this is a reality check. So sometimes quantification of the misuse and also makes a lot of difference. And then they come into the real world, okay, that I was really going wrong somewhere. And so they come into the real world and they set up a balance, and the equation then sets rolling. It has to be a mutual and dual effort, not a one-way effort. Just by saying don't use the phone does not suffice the purpose.
Right, got it. Very, very nice idea, what you've done, and I'm sure others also have got,
Yeah,
will
then
try
if
it
I
out.
just may
Yes,
add to what Muskan said, I
yes,
completely agree with everything. And I think there are two very important things here to highlight, which is that the need for a supportive environment. Even though the COVID has brought all of us at home together within the four walls, not everybody is able to navigate each other's presence 24/7 in a very healthy manner, which is also, making people shift to and become more and more, used to using their digital devices at home all the time, which is also leading to, children, teenagers choosing to find that recluse, that safe space. Um, in the digital world because everybody is home all the time. So having a supportive environment, and as Muskan said, an environment where everybody could talk to each other and set some boundaries um, would help. And the second thing that I would like to highlight is that not all screen time is bad screen time. So there needs to be that balance that parents and children together need to strike in, what is good screen time and what is bad screen time. And one thing that I've seen work for my clients who come for family counseling sessions is making the teenager, making the child, irrespective of their age, a part of the decisions that are being taken for them by the parents, so that they feel that those decisions are valid, are something that they could connect with and follow more easily.
Uh,
thank you, Shobhika. Yes, Joan.
Yeah, I take what Muskan's saying, but I'd like to add also, like when teenagers come for counseling, I do the family counseling, and one of the things I look at is like how can we together make a family time? How can we have dinner together? How can we do maybe help in the kitchen together? And through that we can also have quality time together. We can have come together, learn different skills, because it's so easy for this generation to be, they are born with the media. So it's so easy for them. Whereas the other skills have to be taught. So if you do it in a fun way, I find that that helps bring families together. And one more is introduction to hobbies. So if we can on a Sunday do do some fun stuff together. So each child choosing like, okay, maybe we can do this, we can do this. So going outdoors and introduction to different things can also take you away from your media. And I think we are lucky in Goa because we have so many things that we can do. So,
Right.
and maybe elsewhere also they must be having so many things that you can do. So one of the things is giving them that seed. Okay, what do you think you can do with this time? And also maybe parents, would you like to learn from your child, because I'm learning from my kids to use media and everything. It makes me very anxious to do all these things. So I may be very good at the kitchen, so we can skill share. So looking at how we can do that when in a family session, that could be one of the things we could introduce to the teenagers, or they themselves might tell you what they want.
Very, very nice and interesting point, Joan, that yes, if we can make real life more exciting in the house and with family, then, more exciting than the online world, then I think definitely the youngsters would spend more time here. Aditi, would you like to add something?
I think they've pretty much covered the gist of it, but I will still like to say that children always model their parents and the family environment that is there. So, I've come across so many parents who spend so much of their time utilizing various apps on their phone, or doing so many things on their phone, and children ideally mimic it. So I think parents should also be very cautious about what kind of behavior, verbally and non-verbally, they are portraying in front of the child. And few ground rules need to be set right from childhood, because when it comes to teenagers, it's very difficult to control the behavior. So I do feel that there's a need to set a certain amount of ground rules and to uh, set a base work when the child is younger, and accordingly one can work on it as they grow older.
Okay, yes, thank you, Aditi. I'll now go to the next question. Is to each of the panelists, how do you work with your clients to resolve their issues? That means the general kind of mode that you work in, your step one, step two, step three, so that our audience can be familiar with what is the normal process for people with some mental or emotional disturbances. Shobhika, would you like to start?
Sure. Um, so I'll definitely take the audience through the process of therapy at Silver Linings, which is the protocol followed by our team of psychologists and me, myself too. But before that, there's one thing that I would like to share with everyone is that therapy for me, when I think of my therapy space, the space that I want to give to my clients, I view it as a very safe space. And that's what I think that keeping all processes, all therapeutic techniques, everything aside, that's what therapy needs to be at the crux of it. It needs to be a safe space. It needs to be a validating space, irrespective of what kind of thought patterns you are sharing with your therapist, irrespective of whether your thinking would fit into the definitions of cognitive distortions, confused thinking. I mean, all of those, in my opinion, come at a much later stage. And the first step would be, therefore, to allow the client to talk, to share without a fear of judgment, and give the client that unconditional positive regard, which every psychology student is taught right in the first year when they are exposed to psychology. Because I think somewhere um, during the course of learning some therapeutic modalities, um, the focus shifts so much to fixing somebody that we forget to give that safe space. So, having said that, uh, how's the process of therapy like at Silver Linings or with me particularly? The first couple of sessions, I view them as the session which is entirely about what the client wants to talk about. uh, I'm coming from the assumption that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to talk to anybody. They don't have that safe space where they could just talk without the fear of being judged, without the fear of being invalidated. And therefore, that's what I tell all my clients, that, just open up, share whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm not going to force you to talk about something uncomfortable, but what brings you to therapy is very important for me to know. And therefore, the first couple of sessions is where I adopt a very uninterruptive approach. Let the client take the lead, take the charge, unwind, talk. I'm constantly emphasizing on the word talking because, according to me, talking by itself is therapeutic. And a lot of therapy work gets done just by allowing the client to talk without any interruptions. I do believe, however, in setting up goals from the counseling. As Aditi also pointed out, counseling is a process and it's not a single session magic wand that we as counselors can do and things will be solved. So once the client feels that they have sufficiently shared whatever they wanted to share, whatever brought them to therapy, I help the client set the counseling goals, which is something that we keep revisiting through the course of therapy. Now, I come from a very, like, my therapy approach is very eclectic, I would like to believe. And what do I mean by an eclectic approach is, as Daryl, you mentioned in my introduction, that I am a trained cognitive behavioral therapist. I also am trained in rational emotive therapy, which is kind of an offshoot of CBT as well. And I also come from, so I come from a lot of different therapeutic approaches, which includes a person-centered approach, which I am also trained in hypnotherapy, like a certification in hypnotherapy. There's something known as emotional freedom technique or tapping, which is kind of a mind-body energy approach, which is also where I've got some training in. And I have seen the power of mindfulness and other relaxation exercises on my clients, which I use as alternative therapeutic approaches. So how this goes is that once the client has shared their primary concerns, the things that they want to work on, we have set the goals, then I largely adopt a rational, emotive, cognitive behavioral, that is an RECBT approach to therapy. But I do tap into all these alternative therapeutic formats to help the client uh, further their, their expectations from therapy, because we need to understand this very important thing, that a client is in therapy only for 50 minutes a week, and the rest of the work they have to do at home using what they are learning in the therapy session. So mostly, I I can't hear you, Daryl. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So were you saying something? I'll
Yes,
just
yes.
quickly remind.
I was just asking about, since you mentioned a week, uh, could we, could there be sometimes cases as per need that you may need to see the
Of course.
client sooner
Of course.
as per the need? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it is just an international protocol where we say that therapy needs to be at least once a week, but depending on the client needs, sometimes we can go up to 2 to 3 sessions a week. Some clients, however, do well with just a session over 15 days. So it's really a very every human is different. So we cannot stick to like one single approach. But just to now briefly just summarize my approach to therapy here.
Yes, yeah, in a minute if you could, yeah, because I need
I'll
to.
just quickly summarize that. So the first 2 sessions are just to get to know the client better, and for the client to get to know the therapist's therapeutic approach better. Set the goals, and then we move towards working during the, doing all the therapy work, which involves using all these different techniques in whichever way required. And then there is also this part of therapy which is known as termination. So unlike when you go to a physician, you eat your medicines and you're like, you don't go back to the physician to tell them that, dude, I'm doing fine. In therapy, even termination is a 2 to 3 session work where we are now trying to, ensure that the client can function and deal with the challenges of life even without the counselor's presence on a weekly basis. So that is known as a process of termination. So this is what largely the process of therapy at Silver Linings remains. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobhika. Joan, would you like to please share the kind of process you take clients through?
Yes, Daryl. What I do is, first thing, like Shobhika said, you have to give lots of listening. So the steps which I take would be like either touched on stage wise, or it could go on side by side. For example, empathy and listening will be the first part. Then I go more into self-management. How can you manage yourself? And teaching a few skills, and then how you go back to your home, to your workspace, and use the same skills. So one of the things is, when in the listening, is to listen and understand where they are coming from, and that it's okay, and there's nothing wrong with you, and everything is workable. So somewhere looking at giving them hope, understanding their story, and then also looking at like when you have the sessions once a week, giving them a few helplines where they can type through. So I give them an emailing option where they can, for example, email me they are struggling with their thoughts, to giving them some calming meditations on or making us. And my main thing is, in the first session, I try to ask them to make at least a 5-minute space where they can be present with themselves, acknowledge themselves, see their goodness, and build what is called maybe a victory log or a positivity portfolio. So the second part would be self-management. Sometimes these 4 stages go on side by side. Sometimes it may take, depending on the client and what the client's needs are. So the client may come in, already he's coming in with some amount of self-awareness, and and he's also aware, okay, he has these many problems. So one thing I reflect back on is the unmet needs. There may be many needs that are not being met. So we'll and look at the patterns, whether maybe constructive or destructive. So allow the person to also be part of observing and sharing what's happening. So it also depends on how much the client would like to work on the issue. Like some people may be, okay, this much is enough for me. I'm not able to touch maybe my anger or grief, and that's just fine. Or that inner child wound, and that's just fine. So self-management maybe is also learning how to be an observer. This one thing I teach them is, because in the end is when they go back home, they are going to back to the same situation. So some of the skills have to be taught where they can learn to observe their thoughts and feelings. And along with that, self-affirmations to replace irrational beliefs, helping the client to find the inner hero and work out their own direction. Like they may be having, like usually I find that when people are feeling depressed or sad, there's something that is there within them which needs to be unfolded. It's this box of gifts which needs to be unfolded. Even the anger is a gift for that matter, because it's telling us that some needs are not being met. Maybe that potential is not being reached. So that's so I try to keep my sessions solution focused and as positive as possible. Teaching skills would be like through role play, learning to express, learning to stand up for yourself in simple ways, how to express what you're feeling, what you're saying, what is your preference. And it takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of courage. So a little practice with that is done during the session. And now one of the things is, once you start learning to manage and give time to yourself, learning to care and love yourself, exercises are given to take it back to your home, take it back to your workspace, and to look at the issues there. So how can we sort of witness the same witness effect, take it to other areas in our life? Also, how do we strengthen the inner self or the spiritual self? So that is also like, for example, your loving self, your peaceful self, how we can make it work through in our everyday, within our everyday situations. So one of the things I also help people is to put them onto different groups, like maybe a gardeners group, a poetry group, a theater group, or go back into exercising and empower them. And I support them in whatever their venture is. Maybe they are very good in craft. So okay, why don't you start drawing? Why don't you start? And I have this little book where they post what they draw or make. And that's somewhere where they give their personal space. The personal space may not be only with writing. Perhaps they are venting through a poem, or venting through an article, or going back to their needlework, or doing an art piece. So that itself is a space where, and in this group, most of the people are in this group are on their journey with understanding themselves. So the work of the group is to be appreciative and encouraging. Yeah, so that's all from me.
I keep forgetting my mic. Thank you, Joan, for that. Aditi, yes, would you please like to tell us about
Yes.
how you work with your clients?
Sure. So I am the founder of this space called as Soul Healing, and we have a couple of therapists on board along with me. What we ideally do is most of the clients schedule an appointment through my personal assistant. However, if they have any queries or concerns about how I function, or want to specify certain concerns before they come into therapy, so we have a free 10-minute telephonic call if they want to address any specific concerns. Post which, in the first session, I basically speak about the confidentiality protocol, under what circumstances it is applicable, under what circumstances it would not be applicable. We also discuss basic guidelines and norms for regular functioning of counseling process, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, in case of emergency, in case of, is my audio not?
Yes, it's okay.
In case of, okay, in case of any emergency situation, how they can contact me, and basic norms and guidelines of how it would function. Then I think, like Shobhika said, we strive to create a very safe, non-judgmental environment where the client can come in and there's a lot of venting out process. In the first 2 sessions, ideally, there's a lot of emphasis on active listening. It's more of an uninterrupted flow of whatever they are having issues with, whatever they feel like talking about, having the presumptions that the client knows the best for themselves and they will accordingly guide us to whatever issue they are facing. Post which I ideally ask them to come up with goals to therapy. So, you know, when client is done with catharsis, I ask them to write down what are their goals for therapy. There must be certain reasons why they have opted for therapy. One of the main reasons of doing this is the client feels more in control, and you know that there's a higher need for me for them to direct the direction of therapy. Also, there is regular homework given, at least how we function, to gain more awareness, to gain more insights about their own behavioral patterns. Regular homework is given after each and every session that they have to practice out. Ideally, we meet clients once a week, but again, depending on each and every client and each and every case, it would differ. Um, Apart from that, so for me, there's a high level of emphasis that I place on awareness. I feel that once we are aware of where certain behavioral patterns are coming from or why we behave the way we do, we are in a better space to work towards growth and change. So, you know, any form of conversation that would help the client understand themselves better and gain more awareness about themselves is ideally encouraged. Post which, like, because each and every client is very different from each other, I also follow an eclectic procedure, you know, in which because I have multiple specializations in the field of psychotherapy, based on the needs of the client, based on the nature of the case, different forms of techniques are used in order to help them gain awareness and walk towards the process of change. And again, like I think Shobhika mentioned, there's a high level of emphasis given on termination, at least 1 to 2 sessions. It takes a client to prepare them that this relationship is going to come to an end, and how they are capable of taking on their lives and, you know, bringing out that change outside the therapy session. This is ideally roughly how we follow.
Thank you, Aditi. Very nice point mentioned there, that a lot of emphasis on helping the client understand how this behavior or this, you know, from where it is emerging and why they have come to that space. Because yes, a problem half, I mean, a problem understood is half solved. So that's what we follow in, you know, physical therapy. Also, people are trying to cure so many, you know, chronic illnesses, and but half the battle is won when they understand, okay, it is happening because of these things I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that's a very powerful approach. Thank
Also,
you.
choice is another thing. When people feel that they are more in power, more in control, they have the ability to choose everything that is happening in their life. They feel much more empowered and they can make healthier choices for themselves.
Yes, thank you, Aditi. Muskan, would you please share how
Yes.
you approach it?
Yes, Daryl, as I said, you know, the client, when by the time he reaches us and we speak to each other, the engagement is, you know, of the prime motive of the entire setup. So we need to engage with the client and understand the need why he, you know, came to this therapy session primarily. So we do plan long term. Okay, we do want to understand that what has transpired, but the progress has to be made on a really small scale basis. So when I say small scale basis, means we make 1% improvements. So what the model that I follow is a show model. So show model is basically a simultaneous hand in hand journey with the client, where show stands for, first you see the journey, okay, from a neutral standpoint, you see your journey, okay, there, without any emotionality getting attached to it. See how you have come up, okay, what is the events or situations or people who have, you know, finally led you to this journey. Then honor your emotions, okay, honor it, let it be, whatever has happened had to happen, and there can be a way out, because whatever has happened is temporary, but life is larger than that, okay. So we show them the bigger picture. And O means observe, and observe means awareness, what Aditi spoke about, because awareness will set in that permanency, because they come to me for a month or two, okay, for a few sessions maybe, but once they go back into their normal life, they will have to deal with those set of situations on their own. So O aspect, which is the observation aspect, that they continuously keep on, being in awareness of what they are facing, why they are facing it, and how to get rid of it. We do that. And then W is a winning attitude, that win your journey, okay, whatever has happened, okay, whether it has an emotionality aspect attached to it, emotions, we deep dive into it, that what is it that has happened, okay. It can be anger, frustration, inability to let go, rigidity, and inability to forgive people, or let go of the situations. So a lot of such things that we deal with, and I basically help my clients with the work of mindfulness, law of attraction, and meditations. So this is a combo that I use. And gradually, since we have become a very indoors generation, there is a free approach which I tell my clients, which is available, which is breath work, which is pranayam. So along with meditations, I tell them that this is something which is freely available. So breath work can easily, ease out their emotional outbursts that happen. So I introduce them to law of attraction, meditations, and pranayam, and mindfulness, of course.
Lovely, lovely integrated, approach using holistic modalities. Now, very quickly, we could go through one round before we get into the Q&A now. Just share, with our viewers how they can connect with you, whether you have a website or a support desk. Uh, yes, Aditi, you can start.
Okay. So at least prior to the lockdown, I was having sessions in Ponda, which is our main center. Apart from that, I do take sessions in Margao and Panjim as well, depending on specified days. Anyone can look us up on our website, that is www.soulhealing.co.in, or even if you could look us up on WhatsApp, Instagram, we are readily, you'll find a lot of data under it. We especially after the lockdown, we are taking online and telephonic sessions, or even certain amount of sessions in the clinic wherein people are still coming based on limited appointment slots. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Should
you.
I be posting the number or something
Yes,
here?
if you can, yes, you can put it in the chat box. Okay,
Sure, I'll do
you
that.
can put it in the chat box. Yes, Shobhika, would you like to share?
Yes. So we do have Silver Linings Guidance and Counseling Center has been around for 5 years now. And we have a very strong digital presence. So if anybody wants to look for us, you can check us out on the website. That is www.silverliningsgoa.com. I'll of course put it up. I've already put up the number once. I'll put it up again. We also are present on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google Business. All you need to do is memorize this Insta handle, which is known as Goa Counselor. As simple as that. Our numbers are everywhere. The handle is very easy to memorize, and we also share a lot of mental health related articles, posts, quotations to just communicate with people about how important mental health is. So just follow us, and you will be up to date with everything that we are doing all the time. And of course, to book sessions, we are taking in-person sessions. Yes, the bulk of the work is now online because a lot of clients are not comfortable to come for physical sessions. But Silver Linings and the entire team, we have a psychiatrist, child psychologist, adolescent psychologist, trauma therapist, all on our team. And all of them are available for in-person sessions. We're following all safety protocols. So I hope, yeah, that would be enough.
Thank you. Thank you, John. How would you like people to get in touch with you or the center?
Yeah, Darren. I'm available on, you can Google me on Joan Pinto Counseling or on Facebook. I've yet to learn how to do Instagram and other things, so I'm still learning that. But we also have a, so I'm aware, you can either WhatsApp me or email me on joanpintocounseling@gmail.com. Some people contact me by Facebook, and I practice in Porvorim. And also I have group sessions, like we have a training program in the month of April, May, which is over 12 days. So you can check, it's a team of us trained in process work, counseling, and other alternative therapies, also Rogers, REBT, and positive psychology. So the team works on a 12-day residential program in the month of April, May. And in the month of November, October, November, we have a mid-lab. It's like laboratory of human learning. So when you get together, you replay out what is actually happening in your family. It's like play through that and experience it and go back and look at changes within your home. So check these things out. Joan Pinto Counseling, I think that would be. And for mental health tips, Facebook, Joan Pinto Counseling.
Okay, Joan, could you please, just type that in the chat box, then our audience can get it.
Okay.
Muskaan, could you please share with us how people
Yes,
can get in touch with you?
Yes. So one is through my number, which I have circulated in the chat group. And the other is I have a YouTube channel also. We have a meditation community. So every Sunday we get together, and now we are offering online meditations. So on my YouTube channel, we do YouTube live, and we connect every Sunday and understand and dive deep into what is more permanent than whatever we are experiencing. So that is from the spiritual aspect. Otherwise, we have very shortly, I am also launching from 15th October a habit optimization workshop, because most of our behaviors, 40 to 60% of our behaviors are automated, and they are coming from the subconscious mind programming. So I am going to adopt a coaching of approach where 2.5 months I will be with the group, and we will all lead to progress, which is 1% incremental progress every day. So that is what I adopt, the approach I adopt, and I'm available at my email ID, muskanblogs@gmail.com, which I will type in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. So yes, from what you said is, you're undoing some earlier programming and putting in some, new system, and I'm sure with this new normal, we have to get some kind of new programming as well to deal with the current, situation in the world and the stress that people are going through. And before, I'm just tempted to, before getting into the Q&A session, before taking the first question, it's my own question to the panelists. Since the time of the lockdown, right? If each panelist could just mention one of the mental or emotional stresses that are coming up now, please mention it. And in short, if you would want to give some advice for that. Shobhika, would you like to say something?
So right from the start of the lockdown, there is definitely a lot of anxiety, and this anxiety can be categorized into different types of anxiety for different age. Briefly, if I could mention, the kinds of anxieties that have been presenting themselves right now are academic anxieties, financial anxiety. There's also a lot of health anxiety. And there are a lot of relationship anxieties coming up now. It's not that these problems were not there. Of course, a lot of this anxiety got magnified because of the COVID and the pandemic. I mean, with everybody staying home during the pandemic. But a lot of these anxieties were present all the time. It's just that with 6 months into the pandemic, we now have the time to be with ourselves. And therefore, we are now realizing that this is something that we need to work on. How can you work on an anxiety? To answer the second half of your question, quickly.
If you just want to pick one of them,
right. I won't go into each one of them. I'll just tell you what generally, like a general response for all different types of anxieties, irrespective of whether it is academic, financial, health, etc. Is that understand that anxiety is anticipatory in nature. Anticipatory meaning it has not yet happened. It is about something that you think will happen. And invariably, because of how the human mind is engineered, you're focusing on the negative outcome of that which could happen but has not yet happened. So, one simple strategy would be to try and bring your attention back to the present, to the now, to the here and now, and focus on what is within your control at this very moment with respect to whatever it is that your anxiety is telling you that is going to happen, because it's going to happen, not necessarily, but you think it will happen. So, I hope that was a short
Very
answer.
good.
Which is,
Lovely,
yeah.
lovely, wonderful insight and advice. Joan, would you like to say something?
So I won't repeat what Shobhika said. Very similar. The academic worries about how to do the online stuff, how to relationship issues, financial issues, and also the fear of the pandemic, the sickness, illness, that is also there. So one of the things I would like to say is be aware, stay aware. So art is be aware, reflect, and understand and transform the same thought, like rather than going into the fear mode, rather than going into worry and imaginary, like she talked about, it's not happened yet. It's our fear tends to magnify because of imagination. It's not reality. So transform the thought, change the thought, and see how it, and come back to the present moment. One of the things is also come back to your breath, come back to understanding, just breathing, just to come back to your breath. And sometimes when the stress is too high, I just show them a few of the pressure points of tapping, or like the, yeah, or tapping and some of the points to help them out to, just to bring the attention to the body and manage the mind. And one of the things is I teach them a few hand exercises along with an affirmation. So to start calming the mind down, so that the mind is able to be in a parasympathetic mode rather than in a sympathetic mode, in a stress mode.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joan. Aditi, what would be your observation and advice?
So one of the things that I have prominently noticed is issues in relationships. It could be romantic relationships. It could be issues between the parents and the children, between the husband and the wife, which have heightened around this time, specifically because we are forced to spend so much of time with each other, and a lot of underlying issues might have come up now, um, which is bringing out a lot of other emotions like guilt, anger, sadness towards each other. One of the ways to deal with this is healthy ways of communication. I think most of the issues stem out because of not what is said, but rather how it is said. So, finding appropriate ways to communicate, using more I statements, talking about yourself, forgiving more, criticizing less, appreciating more is a few of the things that I think all of us need to work on when it comes to our close relationships or the people who are closely are with us. Thank you.
Yes, Muskaan, please.
Okay, so primary observations remain the same, is the relationship, where everybody has seems to have developed some kind of spikes like porcupines. So, inability to cope with, the imperfections of your partner, because now you can see them more amplified 24/7. So that is one. And the other is a lot of fear due to the pandemic, also hyped by social media. So I suggest to my clients to stay away from, what news has to say, because northeast, west, south, everything negative is being, shown to us. So there are a lot of good things happening parallelly. So we look at the bright side and silver lining of the things rather than, looking at what the media is forcing us to see. So that's how, that's my observation and my advice.
Thank you. Thank you, Muskaan. Now I'll take, the questions. One is, the first is from Nalini. Uh, Her first question is learning about Swadharma, mainly self care. That is something that Joan mentioned. Help me and my yoga students. Would you please reflect on it? Swadharma is broad part is broad part of its self-care? The second question is health and energy levels are related to many aspects. Would you please cover those? Yes. Any panelists who would like to take that question? Joan, especially you, since you mentioned self-care.
Okay.
So I'm trying to make this question a little sharper and shorter.
True. So
Um,
one of the relationship, basic relationship is starting to relate with yourself. So the COVID in a way has locked you down with yourself, and it sort of brings you all the focus so much to, and because that's why all your emotions and all get heightened. So one of the things is when you give a little space to reflect, to be aware, to reflect and to transform, you will find that within you, you're creating a change. So one of the things is managing your thought feeling on the interpersonal level. Then outside you, it's looking at the managing of the words and the actions outside you, interpersonal. So when these two things start getting seeing sense, you'll find that in the Bible we say love your neighbor as yourself, but the loving of the neighbor is very much, so their focus is so much on the outside, you forget to love yourself. So I keep telling everybody, you need to love yourself, and you're not loving. God has made you perfect. You're a beautiful person. So if you don't value that person who's there, how are you going to help other people? If you don't have love, how are you going to give love? If you don't have peace, how are you going to give peace? So with a little reflection, with a little understanding, with a little inner child healing, we can sort of bring that self-care and self-love back to ourselves. And like I said, I give them this homework where they have to write at least every day, start looking at 3 positives in yourself and writing them down, basically to just acknowledge that yes, I have, besides all this, what I don't like, I have this also what I like. So that's the beginning of self-care, making that space in your home, making that space in your house where you can give that care to yourself. So as soon as I teach them to make a little altar, and I introduce them to the book, The Artist Way. She talks about making this little altar where you can sit down there every day. And as soon as you sit down there, you know that this time is for me to just reflect, to understand, and to become aware of myself. So if this, and the second part is about health. So if I'm not able to understand myself and my feelings, the feelings are dumped in different parts of your body. To simplify, I'm not going into I'm just simplifying all the words. It's dumped, or it's the physiological, the somatic effects of what is happening. So when we look at that, that is also, you'll be able to understand. If you understand, reflect on the thoughts and the feelings, you'll be able to understand, okay, this area is, my shoulders are tingling maybe with the overburden, with the feeling of stress, because these are my thoughts. So when you're able to manage your thoughts, then you'll be able to change that thought. And if your feelings and thoughts don't give you that insight, maybe your body gives you a message. So the third message would come from your body or the energy level outside of you. I hope
lovely. Thank you, Joan. I would just put a further question and directed towards the other panelists. From what you mentioned about there could be certain reasons why a person doesn't love themselves, right? So teaching them techniques or a certain philosophy or certain affirmations to like themselves is of course one part of it, but is a part of therapy also asking the person to put down those things that they don't like about themselves, and is there a process on that? So first I would put it to the other panelists, then we'll come back to you. So Shobhika, do you follow that in your therapy?
Yes, there, in fact, you pointed out something very important. Many a times, we come across clients who are experiencing issues related to self-worth, self-image, confidence. The overall self-esteem is very hampered, and therefore, not just in those cases, but I'm just giving you that as an example to put it into context, that it then helps as a therapist, also us and the client too, to understand where is that self-image issue coming from. Sometimes, where the client doesn't come up to us and say that, I have body positivity concerns, But then when they talk about self image, and then we go to asking, why, what do you think would help you develop that self image, then the whole concerns about body positivity, weight issues come up. So it definitely helps in therapy, and that is an integral process to figure out what it is that you are not too comfortable with about yourself, and how can we move forward using that in therapy, to obviously with the end goal being that you work on that and uh, be more comfortable with a certain part of your life. For example, the way you look, what irrespective of your shape and size. I'm just giving that as an example.
Thank you, Shobhika. Aditi, is there some advice, very simple, one step kind of maybe starting of a process that you would like to give our viewers about this point? You know, if you don't like something about yourself, does it make sense to put it down on a paper and kind of read it and try to make sense of it? Because, as you ask those questions, why, people start getting answers. Have you ever used something like that?
Sure. So, journaling is a major component of therapy where you're writing down a lot of things. We tend to give out a lot of pointers for people to write down what are their beliefs about themselves, what are their ideologies about themselves, the world around them. I feel that it's very important to understand where are these self-limiting beliefs coming from. For any change to come up, we need to know where it is coming from. Once we are aware of where it is coming from, it is much more easier to change. So, talking about affirmations, they definitely help in reprogramming a certain beliefs in your mind, which are very much ingrained right from teenage or right even from childhood. So once we understand where it is coming from, we should be able to change those belief structures accordingly.
Thank you, Aditi. Muskan, on this specific aspect of, as Aditi said, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's, something that people can put down, which is the first step of realization. Okay, this is, the hurtful image that I have, or this is the hurtful dialogue that I say about myself.
So basically, what I feel is all these issues stem up from non-acceptance and low self-compassion, because it is the identity of who I am overall. Okay, and in the identity of who I am, we teach clients to take a roadmap where they will be okay with whatever they have. Okay, which is contentment, and gratitude also plays a lot of role, because I may keep on running for something which is imaginary, but I may not look at the bright side of something which I already have under my carpet and under my sleeve. So gratitude, self-compassion, and self-acceptance of what actually are you struggling with makes a lot of difference, Jaju.
Yes.
Especially gratitude. And I follow a technique which I would like to share with you, which is Book of Positive Aspects. So intertwined with gratitude, if I have a issue with my partner, okay, let's say I'm not going well with my spouse, then we do a Book of Positive Aspects therapy, which is looking at, yes, your partner can be imperfect, accept that, but there must be definitely some bright side of his or her personality. So we ask them to make a list of that Book of Positive Aspects, and they gradually start seeing, okay, that he was compassionate, he has actually been very supportive in my life journey. So that's how the perspectives change. So from complaining to gratitude, that's the journey we take.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Muskan, now here's the next question from, it's anonymous. For those who do not have a supportive family they can talk to, what are the first things people can do when dealing with mental and emotional issues? Okay, so if they don't have a supportive family, uh, who do they go to? Of course, they can come to each one of you and get in touch with you, but is there any first line of action when your family is not supportive?
A good friend.
Good friend, yes.
A good friend or a good family member. If you don't have your primary family, maybe you have an uncle, an aunt who just is there listening. Sometimes friends, I think, help quite a bit. Sometimes if you're not able to do that, journaling helps.
Journaling. And maybe this technique too of them writing down what in very clear words, writing down what is the problem. I think that itself starts giving some answers, because people in general, I think they have really racing thoughts and emotions in their minds, and when they try to put it down logically on paper, and while they're writing and completing the statement itself, I think they start seeing some answers. Have you all experienced that?
Yes, because always tell my clients that, we had heard a proverb in school, that a pen is mightier than a sword. So the moment you pick up a pen, you can just flash away all the thoughts which are, occupying like a mental cloud. It becomes like a brain fog, a mental fog.
So
So
it's
when
an
you
emotional release also.
it is an emotional release, and if you have, as the science has proven that we have 40 to 50,000 thoughts a day, but when you put it down on paper, they are not more than 5-10 problems, and they don't seem to be like so big. They are manageable, and you feel that okay, it is one, we can take one step at a time. It's not that overwhelming. So till the time it's in your head, it's a feeling of anxiety and overwhelmment, but the moment you put on paper, it's controllable, it's manageable.
Aditi, would you like to mention something?
Yeah, I do feel that journaling brings about a lot of awareness. The minute we sit down, even when we are angry or even we are overridden with any forms of emotion, the minute we sit down and write down, those emotions have a healthy outlet to come out. And once we are not emotionally driven at that point of time, I think logic and abstract thinking starts coming into play, and we are able to look at different solutions. We are able to look at different perspectives once those emotions find outlet to come out. And I think that is something that writing really empowers people to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we, yeah, I'll go to the next question. It's from Sampurna Singh. She says, my question is to Dr. Muskaan. My son is 17 years old and in residential school. Over the last 2 years, he's not able to perform in his exams. He works hard but does not get results. He is intelligent, but still the results he's not able to get. So, what would you advise her?
Okay, thank you for this question. So let me tell you, till 3 years down the line, my son used to get D grades. So that was a point of concern as a mother. We become very hyper about it, and we feel very responsible actually. That has something gone wrong in our upbringing that the child is not able to perform. But once having understood that it was not me, and academics was not the end objective of everything. Like today we are sitting here not with our certificates and the score that we got academically, but with the wisdom that we are able to share. So remember that your child in academics, it is always a memory test, that how much your child has memorized over a period of time. So even if the child is not able to have a standard benchmark for the memory test, don't take it as his or her life success. That does not define that how successful he or she will be. So you have to soothe and have an equation. I understand that he's in a residential school, but
Yes.
constantly sending texts which are motivating, and telling him that he matters rather than whatever score is showing on the paper, so that he is okay with. And once he's okay with that and he understands that my parents are supportive, that it's not a shaming process, academics should not become a shaming process, then exactly he will be able to come up the learning curve. Because you'd never know in school, because the children face a lot of bullying and peer pressure also. So he may be going through something which he is not communicating to you. So you need to build up that rapport with him and figure out if there is something bothering, he can share it with you, and it's a safe space to always share with the father or a mother. or if he has a sibling. So he will definitely feel the relief.
And quite often, youngsters may not want to reveal something on the phone, because it's not something trivial that can be talked of. It needs presence. It needs,
Yes.
personal contact. So, is there also, could the mother also seek time with the child or visit the child and spend some time there and let the child open up? Is that a good idea?
Yes, definitely. In fact, I used, since I was a corporate into corporate culture and working. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So I used a night routine with my child. Night routine is very important because that 45 minutes you get after you wind up your kitchen, and the child is also mentally having that space to share something with you. So, that time used with the child. In your case, the child is in a residential school, but do call up or, send a text message. Sometimes the child, when you call up, he may have some friends over with him, and he may not be comfortable. So send a text message, share some stories, okay, share some videos. Nowadays we are blessed, some messages that we cannot communicate directly, sometimes it comes up in a short 5 to 6 minutes video. So share a video with the child which can make him enhance and enlarge his perspective over life. And short-term academics is only one aspect of life. When he moves 5 to 6 years down the line, give him a larger picture, that larger life story, that it is okay to get whatever marks he has got in school. So he should be okay and move on, because that is his uniqueness. He will explore something else in life later on.
Okay, thank you, Muskaan. Would any of the other panelists also want to mention something more?
Yeah, Darren, the mother could give the child focus more on the child, what he's feeling, what he's thinking, and when the child is talking, it would help. That would help the child feel the focus is not so much on the academics but on him, like Muskaan said. So focus more on him, and it's okay. It's okay, this is fine, it doesn't matter, we are here for you. Maybe there's something that's happening, there's something that's going on. So if you'd like to tell me, maybe you can write, you can email. That also, I think those options are given maybe to email at a residential school.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I could go to the next question, and it's anonymous. How to know if we need inner child healing? If you are an adult and don't remember much, what are the signs and symptoms? Uh, yeah. So, what are the signs and symptoms that an adult needs inner child healing?
I feel, can I take this?
Yes, any panel.
Yes, I feel that, when you see yourself getting into constant quicksand of blaming, okay? Because that blame is the one emotion which is a quicksand. It takes you down the spiral, and you feel that, everything else is also miserable in your life. So blame is one emotion which I identify, okay, to understand that, that inner child, is wounded. And because inner child healing comes from a long standing perspective. It is not for something which has happened over 5-6 months. It has happened probably, quite some time back, some years back, or probably it is also embedded in your childhood. So from that perspective, we understand what is the gravity, where is the hurt coming from, what is the intensity of the blame. And inner child healing can be as good as, a weekly process. I do it, in fact, because it is not something, let me tell you, because it is not something one time process, like how you gargle and you floss your teeth. It's like a mental hygiene which is required. So inner child healing, I sometimes feel the need to do it. So it can be done for anybody, even who is healthy. Let's not take it as something, which is offbeat. It is required for everybody for better emotional health, so that you are able to let go of your conditioning, and you can live a happy and free life.
Thank you, Muskan. Would any of the other panelists like to also comment on inner child healing?
Yes.
And I would just extend the question for the, you know, clarity for the audience, because many people have not heard this term before, inner child healing. And as Muskan has spoken, the audience must have already got an idea that it's about trauma that you had in your childhood. So my question is that we have also heard of regression therapy, and I'm not talking of past life and all. It's just the current. That means just going back in time. And in general, regression therapy would mean that the client is lying down in a very relaxed state. It's a semi-hypnotic state. So is does uh, inner child work also happen in that state, or just sitting across the chair in a very normal state? Any other panelist?
Yes, Daryl. Inner child work can also come on in a session when you're just normally doing, but with the consent of the client. And I think that somewhere I see a lot of reactivity. I see this happening in your office. Somewhere there's an authority issue. So I think maybe we need to deal with father wound, mother wound, and it doesn't have to be only trauma. It could be some words which keep reoccurring, and the reactivity of the person will sort of tell you that the person needs those wounds to be healed. So when the person is open to it, then that will help.
So if I would ask now, what are the typical, any panelist can take it up once they have it in their mind. What is the typical statement or behavior of an adult that points to inner child, work needed?
Can I take this?
Yes.
So I don't think there's any particular statement per se. There are a lot of behavioral tendencies that a person might show. Like, for example, difficulty in letting go, difficulty in standing up for yourself, constant need to please people, constant fearful thoughts with regard to the future, in inability to take ownership or accountability for your own actions, difficulty in decision making, or people who cannot draw boundaries, or even small things like over repeated explanation. You're constantly explaining and justifying your actions. These are all signs that there could be something into the childhood that was unfulfilled, any needs of the child that were not fulfilled. It could come out of trauma as well. Coming to your uh, second section, in hypnosis we have a common procedure that we call as age regression, where we take the client back into different ages, regressing back into different ages, and ask them to talk about what memories that they can see. uh, According to how I see it, if you don't recall any of your childhood, there could be high levels of suppressions, which means that your mind, in order to protect itself, has gone and made various decisions in order to suppress those memories, because if they would come into the conscious mind, the person might not be able to deal with in the most adequate manner. So that could obviously be one of the explanations. But ideally, if people find it very difficult to recall any of their childhood, there could be certain amount of traumas that are completely suppressed.
Yes. Thank you, Aditi. Uh, Shobhika, would you like to mention something? Would you like to say?
I gather enough has been discussed on this topic already, and we could move to the next
Okay.
question.
Okay. Done. So when somebody doesn't love themselves, it may be an indication that there is something an individual wants to change about themselves. Maybe that may lead to finding ways to fix perceived defect. It may lead to better outcomes in life and hence lead to better self esteem anyway. So, should one block these indications through self love and acceptance?
If I may take this.
Yes, please.
So, I was just reading that question, in fact, and I want to just clarify this to the person who's asking the question, that self love and acceptance doesn't mean that you are blocking certain signals that your mind or your body is giving you about what is going wrong, about what could be done differently. Self love and acceptance is the first step in the journey to healing, in the journey to recovering, in the journey to working on these so-called defects. So avoid viewing self-love and acceptance as resigning to, and saying that there is, okay, this is how who I am and I cannot change. No, that's not what acceptance is about. Acceptance and self-love is about, okay, this is how I behave, this is who I am, I accept this, but I also acknowledge that this is perhaps not very healthy, and therefore I need to move to a more healthier, more functional behavioral pattern. So, self love and acceptance, therefore, is very important, and take it as the first line of defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobhika. Any other panelists on this?
I'll take this, Darren.
Yes, please.
So, love is an all-encompassing emotion. Basically, the fact that we are here in this physical body because there was an act of love, okay, between two people, and that is how we are here on this planet. So it is not something, which is putting something down and saying that, okay, I am like this, and it's not a positive psychology aspect. It is something which is holistic. Love is something which is integral to you, and so loving ourselves is also an integral aspect, and anything done on this foundation of self love then blossoms holistically. It will not be shallow. So if you are doing some work or some therapy which is devoid of self love, it will have a very temporary effect, and again you will see that yo-yo effect coming back.
Thank you, Muskaan. That was a very wonderful insight. Um, Now I'll go to the next question, which is now between couples and adults. So, any suggestion how an individual should go about dealing with divorce, separation, and attachment to a partner? Uh, and I think, yeah, this is the about, I don't think attachment to the new partner, but to the earlier partner. Any panelists?
So I gather there are a lot of points in that one question. There's divorce, there's separation, there's also attachment to that partner. In my experience working with couples, and I have been working in the sphere of relationship counseling for almost 8 years now. Um, when we are talking about separation or divorce, of course, we need to acknowledge that a couple reaches that point when probably nothing else has worked out. And even if that is the case, we need to understand that two individuals in a relationship have a very deep shared history, and you cannot just shun that or forget about it. It will always have an impact on the individual's life in some way or the other. And it is all about, in a positive way, taking charge and ensuring that the impact that it has on your life could also be positive. Of course, I know when I say this that I am not referring to relationships which are abusive, but I'm talking about relationships where, two people probably loved each other, wanted to be together, but there was just something that was not right, which made them go the separate ways. In that case, you can always focus on what were the positives, what were the learnings to take from that relationship, so that it could help you in your future relationships, or just help you be with yourself and understand yourself better. So, Daryl, that's what my take on this question is.
Thank you, Shobhika. So also part of it is acceptance, yeah, that it's come to this stage, and that the second acceptance is that the learning that we get from that, and that we take it further. Any other panelist would like to say something further?
Also, Darren, when there is a separation, it's somewhere where you need that space. So the space is needed with the couple. One thing is to help yourself grow and find yourself, and also to help yourself and each other. So sometimes the space is required to see the good in you, the good in the other. So you require that separation. So before it reaches the divorce state. And also if you can't, one of the things I tell my couples is, if you don't like this thing in this person, what could it be reminding you of in you? So looking at the process, because very often there's a reflection. We don't like what we don't like in ourselves. So sometimes the observer effect does help. And in separation, how to be at peace with yourself and how to start making yourself again, building yourself again in the separation state.
Thank you, Joan. Muskan, you're smiling, so I think you want to say something.
Yes, in my therapy, I don't, coincidentally, it has so happened that, of late I had a client who had suicidal tendencies, and, they were undergoing through a separation, but now they are at a point they are playing tennis together. That's the message I got.
Wow.
So earlier they were playing a tennis off court, now they're on the court playing a tennis game. So it is also a lot of, temporary kind of anguish which has set up, and so we need to release that temporary anguish, because there is a kind of expectation that my partner should be like that. There is a checklist in my mind, and over a period of time, even it's arranged marriage or love marriage, whatever, I had a mental checklist, and but my partner, in due course of time, I realized that the checklist is not having all the points, ticked. So there sets in a, kind of a disappointment that this person is not filling in my need. As Joan said, it's a very beautiful point. Whatever I am lacking, I want my partner to fulfill, because that's how we are given to believe that we are, the better half. We are not the better half, we are equal halves, okay? And whatever you see in yourself, your partner will be exactly a mirror reflection of that. So the best is that, independently partners work on themselves, and then together they again come in harmony and gel well like a puzzle.
Lovely. That was lovely. Thank you. Thank you. The next question is interesting. Is there any allergy or sensitivity issues as a cause of mental problems? Okay, so yeah, so the question is because of mental problems, can allergies and sensitivities manifest in a person? Have you all come across this? And what is the advice for that?
If I may take this briefly. Uh, so psychosomaticization refers to the somatic manifestations of psychological concerns, and somaticization most commonly happens in terms of allergies, in terms of respiratory illnesses, as well as in terms of stomach or gastrointestinal complaints. So, to just answer the question very briefly, yes, it is very, very possible. In fact, on more occasions than not, the clients who walk into the therapy sessions have one or more somatic complaints. And you would be surprised to know that there is a whole segment of mental health disorders which has actually been attributed to somatoform conditions, in essence, which implies that your physical complaints do not have a physical medical record to back as evidence that why this problem is happening. And we also have something known as an illness anxiety disorder, where an individual feels that there is something wrong contrary to all medical evidence, and there isn't anything wrong. And psychotherapy, whether it is talk therapy, hypnosis, all of that works beautifully in terms of somatic complaints.
Thank you, Shobhika. Yes, another panelist, I
Can I
think
add
Aditi.
something to that? Yeah.
Please.
So I think one must, like I think there are a lot of somatic symptoms that one can go through, including headaches, different forms of body aches in different parts of the bodies, allergic reaction, all of that. But I think one must really be sure that it is not because of any form of physiology. So a lot of times people take it for granted that it could be just because of the mental stresses or things like that, but it could also be because of certain kind of medical condition. So once you rule that out, it could be a possibility that because of psychological stressors or whatever issues you're going through, it could be a reaction to those. So just make a note of that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditi. So, The next question is, as I am scrolling, something is coming to my mind, which was, you know, um, the question from me, which I have been noticing, uh, bipolar disorder. Okay, uh, so some conditions. I mean, now in the world with what's going on, a lot of changes in life, changes in various systems and psychologies across the planet, and people are experiencing of what's called an awakening. So I'm seeing some people, and I call them, that's awakening bipolar disorder, meaning that they have their normal self, and there is some higher version of themselves that's a very high aspirational version of themselves that they're trying to deal with and trying to see whether it's real or not. And that high aspirational self is talking about solutions to a lot of problems, to more higher empowerment, and the other reality is the person is stuck where they are in the situations they are, in the family they are, in the money situation they are, and they can't do much about it. So I'm seeing that as something manifesting as compared to the other cases of bipolar, which you would normally call the very classic bipolar, that is some trauma that has happened to a person in their life up till this date, which is causing them to be in a two different modes, maybe a Jekyll or Hyde mode. So yes, I would look for your insights into whether such things are happening, and how should it be dealt with.
Yes, that one of the things I've seen in my clients is that, like you said, they have a higher aspiration, that somewhere there's that helplessness, how to go about it, how to find myself. And if you go to the talks by Jean Houston, she talks very much about this. Like, and I also see this in youth. If they're not able to find all those intelligences within themselves, that potential within themselves, there is a way to get into depression. So one of the way is to unfurl what is there. You can do this, maybe you can do, and somewhere you see that you give that spark, that inspiration, that I can do so many things. I'm so much more. So that is one thing. It could be like a defense mechanism, or it could be, one could be it is genetic or whatever it is. But one could be also, it could be this what you're talking about. And the second part, I'm saying the self protection. And the third thing is the self actualization, which is not happening. That is one of the, I've noticed that in some of my clients. And once you find there is like an inspiration to find themselves, that is very often which does not happen.
Okay, thank you, Joan. For the other panelists, before I would like you to comment, let us take it as two, very distinct and separate cases. So one case is from your current life, you had certain disturbances and you are expressing a bipolar situation now, and this other aspect of which is called, spiritual awakening. So each of these, if or any of them, would if you would like to comment on, if you've had some experience on that, Aditi.
Um, okay, so when we speak about clinically diagnosed bipolar disorder, it is completely separate from what you're speaking, right? So for a clinically diagnosed bipolar disorder, it must be diagnosed by a clinical psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, and under these conditions medications are required to monitor massive spots of depression along with maniac episodes. What you're talking about, the awakening phase, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so I've had a couple of cases in which people have spoken about this higher self that through reading a lot of spiritual content or through being a part of various groups, they have found different forms of awakening within themselves. And I don't think one can I don't think one can access or one can understand it completely, because it's a very individualized and a personal experience. any any form of knowledge or any form of any form of information that we acquire that can help us understand ourselves better and grow towards a direction where we are able to understand our independence, our freedom, and work to our best potential is considered to be growth. Does that answer your question, or
Yes, yes.
do you still?
It gives a viewpoint. That's thank you for that. Muskan, do you want to say something?
Yes. So, Daryl, my viewpoint is that we all have studied Maslow's theory of hierarchy, and we know that after all the materialistic needs are fulfilled, then life takes its own turn, and that is where we, are taken to self-realization, self-actualization. That's the funnel, actually. And what I feel is now with the advent of social media, the good aspect which has come out is that we have access to all these people who are able to, take people on a journey of self-actualization. People like Eckhart Tolle, okay, uh, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and Louise Hay through her work, You Can Heal Your Life, Basically, and of course, lot of other people like Sadhguru and Art of Living. So we have access to what is the thought process at the level of self actualization, accessible easily. And I think the consciousness of the planet is also shifting now. So when we move from a third dimension to a fifth dimension, we realize that uh, a higher percentage of people want to move to that stage because the planet is evolving and the consciousness is now moving to a different dimensions altogether. So we see parallelly, if the need for self-actualization was heightened, the social media has also supplemented, that knowledge to everybody. So I haven't not met Eckhart Tolle, but I am a big fan of his work, and his work is titled similar to the one you have named, A New Earth. So New Earth and the Power of Now, these are some things which have impacted a lot. You may not have met that guru or that person, but his teaching is so deeply resonating with you that there is a shift, and then you look to deeper dimensions of life. So like Eckhart Tolle says, there is a phase when you want to move from personality to presence. So I think that is a phase which many of us are experiencing. And during this lockdown, many people actually were not in the physical lockdown, but also in the inner lockdown, where they were experiencing a lot of inner dimensions awakening up. So I think that
Thank you
helped.
for that insight, Muskan. Now we time is almost up, and we still have two, three questions, but we'll have to wind up. It's 1 minute to go, and I'll just slip in the last question. It's interesting. Okay, from anonymous, is it a good idea to calm down an anxious mind? Um, Perhaps they are all signals that need to be handled. Uh, Calming it down may lead to bigger problems. What is your take on this? Okay, so an anxious mind, does a person use techniques to calm it down, or is there some deeper work required?
I
If I
feel,
may answer
yeah,
that,
sorry.
sorry. Please go.
Shobhika, you can take it up, dear.
Okay. So my question to that question is that if you are extremely anxious and having panic like symptoms, would you be in a position to rationalize, to question yourself? No. So it is important to calm down the physical symptoms of the anxiety if you are experiencing any, and then work on addressing those anxiety symptoms, addressing on those anxious thoughts. Because if you, it's like saying that I'm having a heart attack, but I want to learn how to operate the heart, you know, and that's just not going to happen. So I think one message that I want to communicate, both this question and the question about self love that had come up, was that please don't view calming down, self love, all of these things as negative. It's not negative. That is what you need in that moment. Panic attacks are a physical manifestation of the anxious thoughts. And unless and until you first deal with that physiologically in that moment itself, you will not be in a position to rationalize, to question those anxious thoughts. So, calming down is very, very important. Bring down your anxiety from a level 10 to a level 5 or 6, and then let's talk about reflecting, introspection, and working on those thoughts. So, I hope that question,
Yes.
I hope my answers.
Yes, it was very clear and wonderful. Thank you. Any other panelists would like
I
to
I
also?
think I think also to add to what Shobhika has spoken, there's a huge difference between reaction and a response, right? So when we speak about reaction, it's such a innate, involuntary, impulsive action that most often we regret. And a response is something that is much more thought it out, and you have really gone through, you've reflected. I think one of the prime difference in both is the fact that when we speak about reaction, emotions are extremely overwhelmed. So when you are extremely anxious, you will not be able to look at the most ideal way of dealing with that situation for yourself or for people around you. So in order to work with anything, I feel that first we need to take a deep breath and calm ourselves, and only post that we would be able to deal with whatever situation or crisis is there.
Thank you, Aditi. So, unfortunately for our audience, this session needs to wind up here. And I thank all the panelists, Joan, Pinto, Muskaan, Khanna, Aditi, and Shobhika too, for being with us, sharing all of your insights, and look forward to our audiences connecting with you and you helping all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Muskaan.
Thank you, all the audiences.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, all
much.
the panelists.
Yes.
Thank you. Good night.